Well, hi again. I'm recording this on February 10th of this year. It's the fourth week of the legislative session. So thanks for joining me in the newsletter again. First, I always try to remind people of this, but I'll just remind you again. I do read all the emails that you send. So thank you very much for communicating with me. And speaking of communication, I have an opinion poll out there right now. So it can be accessed through the link you'll see here in this newsletter. So please give me feedback. I will continue to emphasize the subject of civil discourse. There's a lot of partisan gridlock that's going on in Washington, D.C. We see problems with budgets and things like that. I am trying to my best to prevent that here in Juneau. I know that some folks feel that we should be much more polarized in our political parties and our views, but I believe the only way we actually get any productive work done is if we look for those areas of alignment and move forward in those versus emphasizing the areas where we disagree. And I'm pleased to be able to communicate in a much more fluid way this year with Governor Dunleavy. So that's been a real step forward. I also want to point out to you, and I know a lot of folks don't follow this much, but the price of a barrel of Alaska North Slope crude today is $56.40. That's a significant drop. It was actually up around 68 to 70 just a few weeks ago. So it has dropped significantly. Now, why should we care? Well, we should care because for every dollar decrease in the price of a barrel of Alaska North Slope crude, the state collects $46 million less in revenues. So we care deeply about the price of oil. The reason the price has dropped recently is less demand from China because of this coronavirus. So that again emphasizes our connection to the global economy. It's not just about Alaska. It's not just about the United States anymore. We are part of a global economy. And with China cutting back 25% on their oil consumption, that affects our economy. It also emphasizes for me the importance of growing the permanent fund itself. The permanent fund itself this year is providing approximately 60% of our revenue to support state services. Last year, the Senate proposed transferring $12 billion out of the part of the permanent fund that can be spent very, very easily by politicians, moving that $12 billion into the protected part of the corpus. Moving that $12 billion in 20 years would have generated another $65 billion in the permanent fund itself, in the protected part of the permanent fund. That's serious money, and it's also long-term vision and represents that idea of patience and discipline. Those three principles being important to having a positive future for Alaska. But let's move on. Last week's bills. Last week in Senate Finance, they heard a bill called a spending cap. An appropriation cap is actually, appropriation is the other word for spending or budgets, appropriation. We have an appropriation limit in the Constitution right now. It was put in place 37 years ago. And at that time, it was $2.5 billion. So that was 1982. It allowed for population and inflation to increase it. And that makes it $10 billion today. It actually needed, it actually needed more refinement over the years, and it hasn't gotten any because it's in the Constitution. It is really difficult to change things that are in the Constitution. So now it's $10 billion. Well, we want to change that. So the bill that's under consideration right now is a bill that would set the spending limit at $6 billion. We are under that right now. We're at about $5.4 billion. Things that would not be included under the spending cap would be any money that we would move into the main part of the permanent fund, okay, the corpus that's protected from political spending. It would not include the debt obligations that we have to pay, so those wouldn't be under the spending cap. And if we had a declared disaster, this last summer we had fires. We've had an earthquake a year ago. So those things would not be under the cap. But things that would be included under the cap are any kind of spending. That includes the permanent fund dividend. As you know, the Alaska Supreme Court ruled that the permanent fund dividend is an appropriation, so it falls under the budget and under spending. Debt payments would be under the cap, pension and retirement, and capital spending. Though in the bill, it actually is proposing that additional capital spending up to 5% of the limit of a limit would be able to be spent in addition to the spending cap. So that would create more jobs. That would be about $300 million under today's budget. So that's under consideration right now. There are some amendments possible. But, one of the things that I hear from folks is, well, we need a spending limit because you people haven't cut the budget. So I just want to show you, and this will be in the newsletter, but this slide right here comes from our legislative finance department. This is a nonpartisan think tank, if you will, or budget geeks that do calculations for us and whatnot. This is a graph of spending and revenue. The revenue, these green peaks indicate money. That's revenue that was coming in. This is when oil prices spiked up, and you see where oil prices tanked a few years ago. But this is fiscal year 2020, all the way over here on the right. That's the spending for the year we're in right now. And if you look across, it's approximately the same spending that we were doing in about 2005. We actually have rolled back spending per capita. This is per capita spending, 15 years. So I just want to address the statement that the legislature has not made cuts. Actually, we've made significant cuts. And you'll notice that the spending bars drop off significantly as oil price dropped so precipitously. That's the green peak here. It went from pretty high and then zoomed all the way down to approximately $40 a barrel. And you see that we adjusted our spending as a result of that. So just wanted to bring that out. They also heard last week the motor vehicle fuel tax. That would bring in approximately $30 million as the bill is crafted right now. It would double our motor vehicle fuel tax. Very reasonable. This is a statute that was written in the 70s. There was no email in the 70s. We didn't have cell phones in the 70s. So it's time we adjust it. We have the lowest motor vehicle fuel tax in the U.S. It's 8 cents a gallon. This would raise it to 16 cents a gallon. We also heard from the University of Alaska how they're going to be reducing their budget. You'll see links in the newsletter to that. And we heard the supplemental budget. It is the largest supplemental budget we've ever had. There is a special edition video in this newsletter that takes you through that supplemental budget if you'd like to know what's in it. So that's another video. In the Health Committee, we have not had any hearings recently. Senator David Wilson is the chair of our Health Committee. He has been doing an awesome job for the past 3 or 4 years. A family emergency came up. He hasn't been able to be holding Health Committee meetings. We will be soon having those, however. One of the bills that's in that committee is a bill that would make more moderate changes in the Pioneer Home monthly fees. As many of you may know, the monthly fee to be cared for in our Pioneers homes last year was doubled and in some cases tripled. The new bill in front of us would moderate, still an increase in the cost to live in the Pioneer home and receive those services, but moderate them more. It is a bill that came out of the House, and I am a cross-sponsor to that bill. In other words, I think it's a great step forward. It does create an increase, but it's more moderate. So I ask that my name be put on it also. That's what cross-sponsor means. It means that the bill came from the other body, which is the House, and then senators can sign on as cross-sponsors. I am a co-sponsor of a bill that's being heard in education right now, and that's Senate Bill 6, for an emphasis on reading. Again, I believe it's a great bill, and I have asked that my name be added to it also. This next week, we have a lot of bills being heard. We're hard at work. We're going to hear the State of the Judiciary address, and that's going to be on Wednesday from Chief Justice Joel Bolger. So that's when the Chief Justice comes every year and reports to the legislature how things are going. In Finance Committee, we're going to be hearing a bill that would alter our alcohol laws. So that's on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we're going to be hearing something called Order of Operations. This relates to oil taxes. So you may know that the places that you put your deductions on your income tax may change how your tax liability turns out. There is a prescribed order in which oil companies have to record their deductions to reach their tax liability. We're also going to get an update on the public employees retirement system and the teachers retirement system. And then lastly, on Friday, they're going to talk about bond debt reimbursement. In Education Committee, all of the school districts are coming to Juneau this week and want to meet with all the legislators. So we call that a fly-in. So we have the school district fly-in and then the education bill. Let's see, there's a couple other interesting ones. I know that, yes, in Labor and Commerce, we're going to get an update and a review of the Alaska Hire legal history. So we have a law that requires 80% Alaska Hire for any state government contracts. It has been offered by our Attorney General that law is unconstitutional. So the Labor and Commerce Committee is going to look into the history of that. Then in Community and Regional Affairs, they're going to be looking at the status of the Susitna Dam project. You know that project has been under consideration for, it's been at least 20 years. But most recently, it was set aside. We'd like to know what status it's at right now. And then Governor Dunleavy has 3 criminal justice bills before us. They're going to be heard this week in State Affairs. The budget subcommittees, those are groups of legislators in the Senate who look at each department's budget individually and under a microscope. Those subcommittee meetings are beginning this week. So again, work on the budget. Speaking of criminal justice, I mentioned that the governor has 3 bills that he's offered. I want to remind folks that when Senate Bill 91 passed several years ago, that was the bill that changed our criminal justice laws, and we saw a real acceleration of crime. There were 5 senators who voted no on Senate Bill 91. I was a no vote. Senator Stedman, Senator Dunleavy, Senator Stoltz, and Senator Charlie Huggins. Took me a moment, pardon me. It seems so long ago. But only 3 of us are left. We voted no on that crime bill. So myself, Senator Stedman, and at the time, Senator Dunleavy. One of the many times that I agreed with Senator Dunleavy. The bill did pass and became law. We pulled back provisions of that bill last year. So we are still seeing a lot of homicides, I know, but Governor Dunleavy is offering yet more changes in our criminal justice law. So that's a good thing. There's going to be a section in the newsletter that you can look at here as you read it on the real ID and what kind of identification cards meet that requirement now. And the Marine Highway is a big topic. As many of you may be aware, all of the vessels now are in dry dock being repaired. So this is going to be a significant issue that will be a budget item we'll be looking at going forward. I know this has been a long video. Thanks so much for watching. Do fill out the opinion poll. I look forward to your input, and I'll see you again next week.